Welcome in, everybody. We're diving into a topic today, something really close to our hearts, as always. We're going to be talking about the sacrament.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's easy to, go through the motions every week, but we're hoping to kind of unpack that a little and figure out how to make it a little more meaningful than just, a ritual that we go through.
Yeah, you're right on. And I think to really understand its significance, we kind of got to go back to the beginning.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people don't realize this, but we can actually trace the sacrament all the way back to ancient practices. We're talking Old Testament times here.
I've heard little bits and pieces about that. What was it like back then?
So back then, it was all about animal sacrifice.
Wow.
Yeah, a pretty intense concept for us to wrap our heads around today. Basically, they would offer the firstborn of their flock, as a way to show their devotion, to seek forgiveness.
It's so different from what we think of today. Like when we think about that quiet, contemplative sacrament, it's just such a shift. So how did we even get from point A to point B? How did that evolution even happen?
Well, like anything, it was gradual.
Yeah.
It went from a physical sacrifice to something much more personal, more internal.
I see, yeah.
And I think that's something that's really key to understanding the sacrament today.
Okay.
Because even though we aren't physically sacrificing something, there's still an offering happening.
That makes you think, like, what are we offering then? If it's not something physical, what's that offering?
Yeah, that's the question, right?
Right.
And I think it really comes down to like a broken heart and a contrite spirit. That idea of coming to the table, acknowledging our imperfections, and recommitting to following Christ, putting your own will aside and trying to align yourself more with God's plan.
It's that interchange. It's that trying to be better. And obviously, you can't talk about the sacrament without talking about the Last Supper. I mean, talk about a pivotal moment for the sacrament.
Right.
What are some of the things that stick out when you read Matthew 26, knowing what we know about the sacrament?
I mean, for me, it's all about that symbolism, that foreshadowing that's baked in.
Right.
Picture this, right? It's the Last Supper. You've got Jesus and his disciples gathered for this final meal. He takes bread, blesses it, breaks it, and says, "Take, eat. This is my body."
Yeah.
And even hearing those words now, I mean,
Powerful.
they're so powerful. And he doesn't stop there.
Right. Then he does the same thing with the wine.
Exactly. He takes the cup, gives thanks, and says, "Drink ye, all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins." This wasn't just a random meal.
Right.
These words, right before his ultimate sacrifice,
Yeah.
they tie directly into this practice that, that we do today.
It's like he was setting the stage, making sure that this would continue even after he was gone.
Absolutely.
And the story doesn't end there, right? We also have this amazing account in the Book of Mormon
Yes.
of Christ instituting the sacrament. And I'm always fascinated by those parallels.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not just a rehash.
Right.
It's not just the same story, just in a different book. The Book of Mormon in 3 Nephi, it kind of adds another layer to it. It deepens the meaning, I think, for me anyway.
For sure. Can you walk us through it? Like, what makes this account so important?
So we're in 3 Nephi, and the resurrected Christ appears to the Nephites, right, over in the Americas.
Right.
And what's the first thing he does?
Let me guess. He teaches them about the sacrament.
He teaches them about the sacrament.
That's amazing.
Right. He breaks bread. He blesses it. Just like with his disciples in Jerusalem, it's like this powerful echo, but across cultures.
It's like you said, it's for everyone, everywhere. This message is universal. And what I love about the Book of Mormon, it doesn't just show us the what, it emphasizes the why, which I think is so important.
100%.
It's easy to lose track of that, I think.
Yeah, and in the end chapter 18, verse 11, Christ says it clearly, "And this shall ye always observe to do, to the remembrance of my body, which I have shown unto you."
Always remember him.
Always remember him.
And not just as this figure in history, but like what he did for us.
Right.
What his sacrifice means. That always
Yeah.
gets me.
Yeah. And, you leave sacrament meeting feeling good, maybe a little introspective.
Yeah.
But then Monday rolls around.
I know.
And it's like, how do we bridge that gap?
So how do we bridge that gap? What do we do? Because it can't just be about willpower.
No, not at all. It's more about like building those spiritual muscles,
Okay.
throughout the week, not just hoping that they're going to be there on Sunday.
I like that analogy. So what are some of those exercises we can be doing to kind of get in shape, I guess, for a more meaningful sacrament experience?
Well, one thing that I found to be really helpful is actually just spending time with the sacrament prayers themselves.
Mm.
And not just like, a quick read through, but really like pondering the words and like letting them sink in.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. We hear them every single week, but I don't even think I could quote them back to you. What is it that stands out when you really sit with them?
Well, they're easy to just kind of brush over,
Yeah.
because we hear them so often, but when you really listen to them, it's like this reminder of our covenants,
Yeah.
like what we're actually committing to when we partake.
Yeah.
And it's like this recentering on Christ.
It's like priming ourselves to really be receptive when the sacrament comes.
Yeah.
What else?
Scripture study. I mean, that's huge,
Of
right?
course.
And not just any scripture study, but like going back to those accounts that we were talking about
Right, yeah.
of Christ instituting the sacrament. I mean, those are packed with like insights.
The Book of Mormon, especially. We've got, like, Christ himself explaining it. And in 3 Nephi 20.8, they're describing this experience. They say, and they did break bread and did give unto the multitude, and they did eat and were filled. I mean, such a powerful image.
So powerful. And don't just read it, but like ask questions as you go,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like, why did Christ give us the sacrament? What does it really mean to always remember him?
Yeah, I love that. It's like having a dialogue with the scriptures, pulling out those deeper layers, and really making it real for our lives today. What about journaling? Does that play a role in our sacrament prep?
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
Because journaling is like taking your spiritual pulse, right?
Okay.
So like before sacrament meeting, take a few minutes and just jot down like anything that you're feeling, promptings you've had, thoughts that have been on your mind.
So it's that personal inventory we've been talking about, but we're doing it intentionally now.
Exactly. And it helps you see like what you might need to focus on during those sacred minutes,
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to pray for guidance.
Oh, yeah. Ask. So we've talked about preparing ourselves spiritually throughout the week, but what about during the actual sacrament? Because that's just a small window. There are distractions. How do we really maximize that time?
It's so real. It's only, 10 minutes? But it's amazing how much our minds can wander.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I'm already planning dinner sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about being intentional, right?
Okay.
Instead of just going through the motions, remind yourself why you're there. Visualize, like Christ's sacrifice, his love, the peace he offers. Let those sacrament hymns, those prayers, like wash over you. Remind yourself of what you're covenanting.
It's about being present, really present.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about creating that sacred space, even if you're surrounded by people.
It doesn't end when the meeting's over, though, does it? I mean, we've prepped ourselves, we've tried to be present during, but what about actually living the sacrament Monday through Saturday? That seems like the real challenge.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. But that's the point, right?
Yeah.
The sacrament isn't supposed to be confined to just this building. It's about transforming our lives.
Easier said than done. So
Yeah.
how do we make those Sunday promises a reality the rest of the week?
It always comes back to those covenants, right?
Yeah.
Like when we partake, we promise to take Christ's name upon us, to always remember him, to keep his commandments.
Yeah.
And those aren't just Sunday promises. They're meant to guide us every single day.
So it's about letting those principles of love, service, forgiveness actually impact how we treat our families, the people we work with,
Yes.
everyone, even strangers.
It's about the sacrament being more than a ritual. It's a catalyst for becoming more like Christ.
Okay, I'm convinced. So much more than a routine, but what about when we mess up? Because we all do. We're human. We fall short. Does that, diminish it somehow? Does that make the sacrament less powerful?
Not at all. In fact, I think that's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah, okay.
It's like this weekly reset button, a chance to seek forgiveness, to start fresh.
It's like a built-in system for spiritual renewal. It's amazing when you think about it. No matter what happens, we get this chance to realign.
Yeah, it's not about being perfect. It's about progressing. It's about trying and seeking forgiveness and relying on Christ to help us, become our best selves.
So we're being transformed one sacrament at a time. This idea that it impacts our lives, it makes me think about worship in general, actually. This whole conversation about the sacrament impacting our lives makes me think about worship in a broader sense. Is it too much of a stretch to say that the sacrament is like training for a more encompassing kind of worship, one that goes beyond Sunday service?
Not at all. In fact, I think you've hit on something really important. True worship, it isn't confined to just an hour on Sunday. It's about cultivating this attitude, of reverence, of devotion that just kind of permeates everything we do.
I love that. So if the sacrament is like this weekly workout for our spirits, how do we take those strengthened spiritual muscles and put them to work in our everyday lives?
It starts with asking ourselves those tough questions, the ones that really get to the heart of our relationship with Christ. Like one question I always come back to is, how is Christ's sacrifice influencing my daily life?
Wow, yeah, that'll stop you in your tracks. Because it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget to ask the big questions.
Yeah, it's a question worth wrestling with though, right? Because if we're not actively looking for ways to like live out his love, his sacrifice in how we interact with others, then what are we really doing?
Right, it's a good reality check. And I feel like it goes back to what we were talking about before, that intentionality. Like
Yes.
really making those conscious choices to align our actions with what we believe, inside and outside of church.
And here's another question to sit with. What am I doing well as his disciple? And what can I improve?
I like that one because it's two parts. It's not just about, harping on the negative. It's like, okay, where am I reflecting is light? Let's celebrate that. But also, where can I grow?
Yeah, it's about balance.